Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. It's strange how something can feel off without anything technically being wrong. You go about your day, share a laugh, talk about groceries, maybe even kiss goodnight. But something's gone. Like a light bulb in a room you rarely visit. You don't notice it at first, but once you do, you can't unsee the darkness. That was my marriage. We'd been together 7 years, married 5. No kids, not by accident either. We both agreed early on we wanted to make the most of our time before throwing a baby into the mix. We were one of those, we're a team couples. Partners in everything, from choosing throw pillows to Sunday meal prep. That's why it took me so long to realize we weren't a team anymore. Her name's Marla. And if I had to describe her in one word, it would have been intense. The kind of woman who knows exactly what she wants, says exactly what she thinks, and makes you feel like you're lucky just to be standing beside her. And for a long time, I was lucky. Or at least I thought I was. When we met, I was in a career slump, just left a job I hated, trying to figure out what was next. She was already making 6 figures in a consulting firm and didn't need anyone. I think that's what drew me to her. She didn't need me, but for some reason, she chose me. Marla was sharp, witty, and the most confident person in any room. And I wasn't intimidated. At least not at first. I was proud to be her partner. She pushed me, made me sharper, helped me get my footing again. I landed a role in marketing strategy and slowly built up my own reputation. But I noticed it about 6 months ago. The spark we used to have, and not just in bed, but in everyday things, was dimming. She didn't laugh as easily. Didn't ask how my day was. Her kisses became routine. And touch? That disappeared gradually, like leaves falling off a tree you didn't realize was dying. I didn't jump to conclusions. I thought maybe she was stressed. Her job had picked up pace, and she was now managing her own team. Maybe she was just burnt out. I tried to do more around the house, gave her space when she needed it, stepped up in ways that might ease her burden. But instead of softening, she got colder, more distant. She'd come home late, barely say a word, and spend most of her evening on her phone or behind her laptop. And on the rare days I'd reach for her hand or try to kiss her neck like I used to, she'd flinch, not in fear, but with the kind of recoil you give when someone steps on your mood. Then came the moment that changed everything. It was a Thursday night. She had just come out of the shower, wrapped in a silk robe. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, waiting to ask if she wanted tea, something dumb and domestic like that. She leaned over to grab her night cream from the dresser, and I instinctively placed my hand on her hip. It wasn't even sexual, just affectionate, gentle. She froze, then turned her head slowly, eyes locked onto mine like she didn't recognize me. "Take permission before you touch me," she said, voice razor sharp. The room went quiet. My hand slipped away like it had committed a crime. At first, I thought she was joking. Her tone didn't change. Her face didn't twitch. She wasn't angry. She was just stating a rule, like a boss outlining protocol to an employee. And the worst part? She didn't look at me again. She turned away, applied her cream, and crawled into bed. No apology. No explanation. I couldn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling while she scrolled through her phone, laughter occasionally slipping from her lips at whatever she was reading or texting. Not once did she glance at me. I lay there, feeling like I'd been evicted from my own marriage. The next morning, she acted like nothing happened. Asked if I could grab oat milk from the store. Told me to be careful on the roads, pecked my cheek, and left for work. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee, the steam fogging up my glasses, and thought, did she even notice how she spoke to me last night? And then I realized she did. Of course, she did. Marla was always calculated. Every word, every move intentional. That line wasn't an accident. It was a message. Not just about physical touch, but about control. And she wanted me to know who held the reins now. That was the moment I stopped making excuses for her. That was the first crack in the dam. And once it started to leak, there was no stopping the flood. I started paying attention after that night. It wasn't just about the permission line anymore. It was everything. The little things that had once seemed harmless or too subtle to address. The tone in her voice when I asked about her day. The way she rolled her eyes when I talked about mine. She didn't say anything cruel, not outright. But it was in her body language. Her posture. Like she was always 2 inches away from being completely done with me. I tried to brush it off. Told myself I was being too sensitive. We all go through phases, right? Maybe we just slipped into one. But then the patterns started to repeat. One night, she walked in from work late. She was wearing lipstick, bold, deep red. the kind she usually reserved for date nights or formal events. Her perfume was heavier than usual, that sharp floral scent she only wore when she wanted to leave a trail behind. I looked up from the couch. Long day. She blinked, like she'd just noticed I was still there. You're still up? That was all. No answer to my question. No hey, no smile. Just a flat observation, like my presence was unexpected or somehow inconvenient. She headed upstairs without another word, and I stared at the spot where she had been. The next morning, I asked where she'd gone the night before, not accusing, just curious. She said her team had gone out for drinks after hours. When I asked who went, she got defensive. Why? You keeping tabs now? I told her I wasn't. I just thought we used to share things. She snorted. We used to do a lot of things, she said under her breath. And that was that. It didn't stop there. A week later, I came home early and found her laughing on a FaceTime call in the kitchen. She didn't hear me walk in right away, so I caught the tail end of whatever she was saying. He's such a puppy. Doesn't even push back. Just nods along. I waited a beat. When she turned and saw me, she barely flinched. It's just work gossip, she said, ending the call. A puppy. I didn't ask who she was talking about. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of knowing I cared that much. But something shifted in me that day. I stopped trying. Stopped reaching out. Stopped initiating affection or conversations beyond what was necessary. If she wanted to live like we were roommates with a shared mailbox, fine. I could play that game too. But even when I pulled back, she didn't soften. If anything, she doubled down. She started talking about her male coworkers more often, how sharp one was, how funny another one could be. She'd make these throwaway comments about how some people knew how to dress professionally, or how some men had the kind of ambition that made them magnetic. I knew what she was doing. It was bait, and I refused to bite. Then came the Sunday dinner with her friend Chelsea. Chelsea had always been decent to me, at least on the surface. She'd visit once every few weeks, and we'd have wine, dinner, small talk. But this time, it felt different. They both had a little too much wine, and somewhere in the middle of dessert, Chelsea looked at me and said, "You know, Marla tells me everything. You're a lucky man. Not every woman would stick around as long as she has." I gave her a polite smile. "Well, I think we've both made compromises." Chelsea tilted her head. "Have you?" Marla laughed. "Don't start," she said, but her eyes were locked on mine, challenging me, daring me to say something back. That night, after Chelsea left, Marla stood by the window and lit a cigarette. She only smoked when she was tipsy or angry, or both. "You're awful quiet lately," she said, blowing smoke toward the open pane. I shrugged. "You're not exactly overflowing with conversation either." She turned to face me, her expression unreadable. "Is that your way of blaming me? For your own emotional constipation?" I didn't answer. What was there to say? She smiled. That cruel kind of smile you give someone when you know you've already won. Then she walked upstairs without looking back. Something inside me clicked shut that night. I wasn't angry. Not really. I'd passed anger weeks ago. What I felt now was something else. Calm. Cold, quiet clarity. Like waking up underwater and realizing you don't need to swim to the surface anymore. You just let go. I didn't know the details yet. But I knew. There was something more going on. This wasn't just a woman going through stress. This wasn't a communication breakdown or a midlife lull. This was intentional. Targeted. Marla was playing games. And I was done playing along. I didn't go looking for evidence. I want to be clear about that. I wasn't the guy snooping through texts or installing spyware or tailing her car. I didn't want to be that guy. But sometimes, life doesn't give you the luxury of ignorance. Sometimes, the truth just walks through your front door, dripping all over your clean floor, daring you not to look down. It happened on a random Tuesday. I had a meeting rescheduled, so I came home around 2 in the afternoon. The house was quiet. Marla was supposed to be working from home, but her car wasn't in the driveway. I figured she'd gone out for coffee or a walk or whatever. I didn't think much of it. Until her iPad pinged. It was sitting on the kitchen counter, screen still lit. A message had popped up on the lock screen from someone named Ray, work. "You looked incredible in that black dress today. Couldn't stop thinking about last night. Let me know when he's out of the house again." I stood there staring at it. Not breathing. Not blinking. The words swam in front of my eyes like I wasn't supposed to see them. I didn't unlock the iPad. I didn't need to. I already knew. The black dress. The perfume. The power games. The condescension. It all snapped into focus like a puzzle I hadn't realized I'd been assembling. She was cheating on me. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came the next evening, when I told my coworker, Eric, about what I saw. Eric's wife, Jody, was in HR at Marla's firm. I hadn't connected those dots before, but when he offered to ask Jody casually if anyone named Ray worked with Marla, I said sure. Later that night, he texted me, "You're not going to like this. Jody says Ray isn't from her department. He's from another branch, but he's come up in gossip before. He's apparently seeing someone at work who's married. Some people think it's Marla." I stared at that message for what felt like an hour. That's when the second blow landed. A few days later, I got a LinkedIn message from a name I didn't recognize, Emily Summers. She introduced herself as a junior analyst at Marla's company, said she was reaching out because she didn't know who else to talk to. Her message was short. "I don't know if you're still with Marla, but I overheard something during lunch last week that's been bothering me. I don't want to stir drama, but she and someone named Ray were joking about how he doesn't even suspect a thing and how puppy husbands are the safest bet. If I'm wrong, I sincerely apologize for the intrusion." I didn't reply right away. I couldn't. That word again, puppy. She said it in our kitchen. Her coworker repeated it behind my back. And now some random stranger was echoing it like it was an inside joke passed around while I was busy trying to be a decent husband. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was entertainment. I don't know how long I stood there, but something inside me cracked open. Not like a bottle or a window. No, this was quieter. Like a lock that finally slid free after months of pressure. I sat down, opened my laptop, and pulled up our shared finances. Credit card statements, bank activity. She hadn't been clever. I found dinner charges at a boutique steakhouse we'd never visited together. 2 tickets to an art gallery. A hotel bar tab 2 weeks ago when she said she was working late. I didn't print anything. Didn't take screenshots. I just sat with it. I was so far past anger that it didn't even sting anymore. The next morning, she kissed me on the cheek like nothing had changed. Told me she'd be working from the cafe downtown and might stay late to prep for a presentation. I nodded and told her to take her time. She was halfway out the door when I said, "Hey." She turned. "You still wearing that black dress to work?" She froze. Just for a second. Then smiled. "Why? You finally noticed it." I smiled back. "I always notice, Marla." She didn't say anything else. Just left. That was the last time I looked at her and felt anything close to love. I wasn't planning revenge. I wasn't even planning a confrontation. Not yet. But something was shifting. The weight of her contempt, the layers of her deception. I'd carried it all long enough. And now it was time to set it down. The thing about a woman like Marla, sharp, composed, calculating, is that she expects chaos. She expects confrontation. Screaming, crying, ultimatums. She expects you to fall apart so she can play the role of the unbothered observer. Calm while you burn. So I didn't give her that. I gave her silence. And silence made her nervous. In the days after I found everything, Ray, the messages, the receipts, I said nothing. I was polite, warm even. I asked how her day was, made coffee before she woke up, folded the laundry, made sure she had fresh towels after her showers. I think it threw her off. One night she narrowed her eyes at me over dinner and said, "You've been weirdly sweet lately." I smiled and said, "Just feeling grateful." She blinked. "For what?" "For clarity," I said. She stared for a second longer, then laughed like it was a joke. But I could see it in her eyes. Something wasn't sitting right with her anymore. She was used to control, and I'd quietly taken it back. The first thing I did was open a separate checking account. Nothing flashy, just a standard personal account under my name at a different bank. I moved a portion of our joint savings into it every couple days. Not enough to raise alarms, but enough to build a landing pad for myself. I also called an attorney, not to file, not yet, just to talk, lay out the situation. She was sharp, understood the nuance of emotional manipulation and strategic betrayal. She told me exactly what I'd need: documentation of infidelity, financial activity, and evidence of emotional volatility if it ever came to court. Even better, she had experience dealing with high-powered professionals who assumed the law bent for them. Perfect. After that, I contacted IT at my job. Asked them how to extract message data from a deactivated iCloud account for a security briefing. They sent me a guide. I used it to create an archive of everything that had synced through her devices over the past year. Emails, notes, voice memos, calendar invites, iMessages. The trail was clearer than I imagined. Turns out Ray wasn't the only one. There had been another guy before him, someone from a conference in Chicago she attended last fall. And a couple months ago, she'd even created a private folder in her notes app titled Reframe. Inside? Journal-style entries about how she deserved more passion, more stimulation. One line stuck with me. He's kind, safe, but predictable. He doesn't challenge me anymore. Doesn't intimidate me. Maybe I need that to feel alive. No rage. No tears. I just sat with it. It confirmed something I hadn't let myself admit until then. She didn't just cheat. She pitted me. Believed she was entitled to more than what I gave her. I made copies of everything and backed them up in encrypted folders on 2 separate drives, one at my office, one mailed to my brother across the state. Just in case. The next move was even simpler. I stopped engaging. I didn't initiate conversation unless it was necessary. Didn't ask questions. Didn't pry. And the less I reacted, the more she began to provoke. That's how I knew I'd gotten under her skin. One night, she walked into the living room wearing that same silk robe from the night she snapped at me. She stood there a beat too long. I looked up from my laptop. Everything okay? I miss when we used to touch, she said, voice soft. I nodded. Then maybe you shouldn't have demanded permission like I was a stranger. Her jaw tensed. It was one moment. I closed my laptop. No, Marla. That was a declaration. I just finally heard it. She didn't reply. She just walked away. I didn't follow. She tried to be sweeter after that, offering to cook dinner, asking if I wanted to join her for drinks on the patio. I declined every time. Politely. Not because I wanted to punish her. I just didn't want anything from her anymore. And here's the irony. As soon as she felt me slipping away, she began trying to win me back. It was almost pathetic. Like a queen who realizes too late the kingdom doesn't kneel anymore. She didn't know it yet, but the trap was already set. I'd gathered everything. Prepped my exits. Knew exactly what to say to her boss, who, thanks to Emily's LinkedIn message, I knew wasn't exactly thrilled about workplace romances under his roof. All I had to do now was wait for the right moment. And that moment came faster than I expected. It happened on a Saturday. The sun was out. Birds chirping. One of those annoyingly beautiful days that doesn't match the mood sitting heavy in your chest. I had already set everything in motion earlier that week, emailed the lawyer, prepped the documents, made sure the financial accounts were secure. I wasn't wondering if anymore. Just when. And then she gave me the opening. We were in the kitchen, halfway through coffee. I was reading something on my phone when she walked over and reached for the sugar jar. Her robe brushed against my arm, soft, familiar. I instinctively reached out, just lightly touched her waist as I stepped aside to give her room. That's when she said it again. Take permission before you touch me, she muttered, not even looking up. Not loud. Not angry. Just dismissive. And that was it. I set my mug down. Slowly. Carefully. Actually, I said, you have my permission. She turned, puzzled. For what? I met her eyes. To leave. There was a pause. She blinked, processing. What are you talking about? I mean it, I said, voice steady. You're free to go. You've been free for a while now. I just figured it was time I said it out loud. Her face shifted, confusion turning to cautious curiosity. Are you seriously playing this passive-aggressive game now? Because I asked you to respect my boundaries. I smiled. No, Marla. This isn't passive. And it's not a game. This is me letting go. Because I've read your texts. I've seen the notes. Ray. The other guy from Chicago. The black dress. The jokes at lunch. The pity party you wrote about how I'm safe but unchallenging. All of it. Her lips parted, but no sound came. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't lean forward. I just stood there and watched every ounce of that arrogant detachment melt from her face. You went through my stuff? I nodded. I didn't have to look very hard. You left your mess everywhere. Those were private. Of course they were. So was my trust. She took a step back. You don't understand. It wasn't like that. Ray was just. I don't care who Ray is. I was confused. No, I said. You were cruel. That shut her up. I reached into the drawer by the fridge and pulled out the envelope. Clean. Crisp. Her name printed on top. Here, I said. Consider this official. She took it with shaking fingers, like she already knew. I filed. Everything's documented. The lawyer has copies. You don't need to move out today, but I expect you gone by the end of the week. Her eyes glistened. Wait, just like that? After everything we've been through? You mean everything I went through? I said. She was trying to hold it together. I could see her lip tremble, her fingers tighten around the edge of the envelope. You can't seriously think this is the right way to end things, right? I said. No, but it's honest. She laughed bitterly. So what, you're just done? You don't even want to hear me out. No, I said. I heard enough when you looked me in the eye and told me I needed permission to show affection in my own home. When you bragged about me like I was a safety net to your friends. When you laughed at how easy I made it. She opened her mouth again, but nothing came out. So I kept going. I don't want an apology. I don't want excuses. I don't want closure. I want peace. And now, I'm finally taking it. I walked past her then. Calm. Final. I didn't look back. She stood there, clutching the divorce envelope like it might burn her fingers. For once, Marla, flawless, composed, always 2 steps ahead, had nothing to say. Later that night, I sent a respectful email to her employer. No drama, just a summary of what I knew. Inappropriate conduct between 2 employees, compromising internal policy. Attached were screenshots. By the end of the following week, she was gone from the house. 2 weeks later, gone from the company. And just like that, the woman who demanded control lost everything she tried to dominate. You'd think I'd feel vindicated. But what I really felt was stillness. There was no triumph. Just space. Space in the house. Space in my chest. Space in my life that used to be filled with walking on eggshells, guessing games, silent punishment, cold glares. That space? I filled it with music again. Cooking. Running. Sleep. Peace doesn't always show up loud. Sometimes, it walks in after the silence has done its work. And you know what? It doesn't ask for permission.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.